On the day of the Gaokao, I woke up 10 minutes earlier than my alarm. Outside the window, the sky was still gray, but the clatter of spatulas was already coming from the kitchen, mixed with the gentle sizzle of oil in the wok. Mother was busy making breakfast again. She had specifically taken the day off for today, and was even more nervous than I was. I turned over, stared blankly at the ceiling for a while, then sat up. "Nina, are you awake? The noodles are ready. Let's eat and head out early." "I'm up," I answered, rolling out of bed. After washing up, I sat down at the dining table. A steaming bowl of egg noodles was placed before me, with a sunny side-up egg nestled beside it, fried to a golden brown with slightly crispy edges, cooked exactly the way I like it. "Mom, you don't need to be so nervous." I picked up my chopsticks. "It's just an exam. How can I not take it seriously? This is the Gaokao." Mother sat down opposite me, clutching her teacup with both hands, her fingertips turning slightly pale. "Your father back then?" "Never mind, let's not talk about him. Just keep a steady mindset today and don't panic." I nodded and lowered my head to eat my noodles. Mother didn't say anything more. She just watched me quietly, occasionally adding a spoonful of soup to my bowl. At 6:30, my mother and I headed out. The exam center was right at our school, a 20-minute walk away. All along the way, my mother chattered on, ticking off items one by one. Admission ticket, 2B pencil, eraser, water bottle. I responded to each one, not interrupting her. I knew she needed to say these things to put her own mind at ease. At 7:10, we arrived at the school gate. Quite a few examinees and parents had already gathered at the school gate, but I soon noticed something. There wasn't a single familiar face around me. There are 42 people in our class, and the exam center is right here at our own school. By rights, at least half of them should have arrived by now. I stopped and looked around. They probably haven't arrived yet. Mother followed my gaze and looked over. "Let's go inside first and find a place to wait." "Okay." After saying goodbye to Mother, I walked through the school gate and headed toward the teaching building along the familiar tree-lined path. The campus was much quieter than usual, with only a few examinees rushing past occasionally, their footsteps sounding especially clear in the empty morning. At 7:45, I reached the floor where the exam room was located. The hallway was empty, with only the sound of my footsteps echoing. I looked out the window. On the playground, there were scattered groups of examinees and parents, but none were from our class. I took out my phone and opened the class group chat. The group was very quiet. The last message was from last night at 9 p.m., sent by Selena. Urgent notice. Upon receiving instructions from higher authorities, due to equipment maintenance at the exam venue, today's Gaokao time has been adjusted to start at 2 p.m. Please inform each other and do not arrive early. I frowned. I went to bed at 10 last night and didn't have the habit of checking group messages before sleep. But I clearly remembered that the admission ticket stated the exam would start at 8:30 a.m. I quickly opened the Education Bureau's official website and refreshed. The first item in the announcement board, written in black and white, read, "The Gaokao schedule remains unchanged. The exam will start promptly at 8:30 a.m. It was dated 3 days ago. This notice is fake." Just as I was about to call the class monitor, a small voice came from behind me. Nina." I turned around. Yvonne was standing at the end of the hallway, small in stature, wearing round-rimmed glasses, clutching her exam admission ticket, looking a bit flustered. Her family and mine are neighbors. We grew up together, and like me, she is quite inconspicuous in the class. "Why are you here alone?" She walked over quickly, lowering her voice. "Where are the others in the class?" "None of them came," I said. "Did you check the group messages last night?" Yvonne shook her head. "I was helping my mom watch the shop, and I went to sleep as soon as I got back, didn't check my phone." "What happened?" I handed my phone to her. After reading it, her face turned pale instantly. This says the exam was changed to the afternoon? Fake. I checked the official website, the time hasn't changed." Yvonne's eyes widened instantly. "Fake? Then, who sent it?" "Selena." Yvonne froze. "Selena? Why would she send a fake notification?" "I don't know." I put away my phone. "But this isn't the time to think about that. Look, aside from the two of us, no one else has come to class. They all believed it. Yvonne's face turned a few shades paler. Then should we hurry up and tell them? I checked the time, it was 7:50. There were still 40 minutes before the exam started. I opened the class group chat, my finger hovering over the screen. If I sent this message and they rushed over from home, they would most likely be late. But if I didn't send it, they might miss the entire exam. Nina, what are you hesitating for? Send it quick. Yvonne was anxious. I took a deep breath and was about to type when the classroom door suddenly opened. The invigilator leaned halfway out, looked at the two of us and said, "Are you candidates for this exam room? Come on in first. There are still 40 minutes. You can get used to the environment." Yvonne and I exchanged a glance and walked into the classroom. A few candidates from other classes were already seated inside, all looking down and flipping through their books. We found our seats and sat down. I opened the class group chat again. Just then my phone vibrated. It was a message from the class monitor. "Victor, at everyone, I just checked the official website. The exam is at 8:30 a.m. That notice in the group is fake. Everyone hurry to school." The group instantly exploded. "What? Fake? I'm still on my way, 40 minutes left. Will I make it? Oh my God. I'm still at home. Hurry, hurry, hurry. Take a taxi." I watched the messages scrolling frantically on the screen, and my heart sank. They wouldn't make it in time. 8:20 noisy footsteps and anxious shouts began to echo through the hallway. "Hurry up. 10 minutes left. Where's my exam permit? Did you see my exam permit? Mom, stop following me. Go back now." Yvonne and I sat in the classroom, listening to the chaos outside through the door, neither of us speaking. It was 8:25. The proctor stood up and walked to the door. "The exam begins in 5 minutes. Candidates who have not entered yet, please come in immediately." The footsteps in the hallway grew more urgent. Some were running, some were shouting, and some were crying. It was 8:28. The classroom door was suddenly pushed open, and several classmates, dripping with sweat, rushed in, their faces pale and frantically searching for their seats. I recognized a few of them as being from our class. When their gaze swept over me, it was filled with terror, panic, and something else I couldn't quite put into words, as if I owed them something. 8:30. The bell rang. The invigilator closed the classroom door and began distributing the exam papers. In the corridor, someone was still banging on the door. The sound was muffled, blocked out by the thick wooden door. Then came a burst of sharp crying. The door did not open. When the bell rang to signal the end of the exam, I put down my pen and let out a long sigh. The first exam was Chinese, and I performed fairly normally. I packed up my stationery, stood up, and walked toward the door. As soon as the door opened, a wave of heat hit my face. The corridor was packed with people. Not the examinees, but the students who had arrived late, along with their parents. Dozens of eyes all fixed on me at once. "Nina!" A hoarse voice rang out. Victor stood at the front of the crowd, his school uniform collar unbuttoned, sweat covering his forehead, and his eyes bloodshot. He stared fixedly at me, his voice trembling. "You? Why didn't you tell us? That notification was fake. Why didn't you tell us?" "I didn't see that notification," I said. "I went to bed early last night." "Liar!" Victor roared. "You're usually the most cautious one. How could you not check the group messages? You did it on purpose. You wanted us to be late so you could do well yourself." "Exactly," a girl nearby shrilled in agreement. "She always keeps to herself and doesn't care about us at all. Traitor. You made us miss the college entrance exam. Can you even afford to pay for that?" Angry voices surged from all directions, drowning me like a tide. Yvonne hid behind me in fright, clutching my sleeve tightly, her hands trembling. I stood there watching them. Their faces were twisted with anger, their gazes piercing like knives. I knew there was no point in explaining. They needed a target for their venting, and I just happened to be standing here. "I didn't see that notification," I said again, my voice not loud but clear enough. "Who would believe that?" Victor sneered. "Do you take everyone else for a fool?" Just then, a gentle voice came from the edge of the crowd. "Victor, everyone, let's calm down first." The crowd automatically parted. Selena walked in. She was wearing a white dress, her long hair draped over her shoulders, her face wearing just the right amount of concern and anxiety. She didn't need to take the college entrance exam. She had secured her admission quota long ago, yet she still came today, claiming she was here to check on everyone. Selena. Victor's voice instantly softened. Why are you here? I heard something happen, so I rushed over to take a look. Selena's voice was slightly choked, and the corners of her eyes turned red. That notification. I posted it, but I was tricked too. What? Victor was stunned. Selena sniffled, her voice trembling. Last night, I received a message from an unknown number, claiming to be an urgent notice from the Education Bureau that the exam time had been changed to the afternoon. The number looked very official, so I believed it and forwarded it to the group chat. Later. The more I thought about it, the more something felt off. I called the school to verify, only to find out there was no such thing at all. Her tears fell. It was almost midnight, and I didn't want to disturb everyone's rest, so I figured I'd just tell them the next morning. But I overslept this morning and it was already past 8 when I woke up. I hurriedly sent a message in the group to remind everyone, but it was too late. I'm sorry, it's all my fault. Victor's expression changed. He walked over to Selena and gently patted her shoulder. Selena, this isn't your fault. You were just trying to kindly remind everyone. If anyone's to blame, it's the person who sent the fake message. But everyone was late. Selena looked up, her eyes brimming with tears. I feel like I'm the one who caused this for everyone. It's not your fault. Several classmates gathered around to comfort her. You were just used by a scammer. If anything, blame the person who spread the fake news. Right. Victor suddenly turned to look at me, his gaze turning sharp. Nina, you're usually the most cautious. You must have verified that the notification was fake, right? I looked at him. Yes, I verified it. Then why didn't you tell us? Victor's voice rose again. You knew it was fake, but you didn't warn everyone. You did it on purpose. I didn't see that notification. I said. I only saw it when I got to the exam hall this morning. Liar! A girl screamed. Selena said she was still worrying about everyone near 12 o'clock. You're even more irresponsible than Selena. At least she sent a warning. What did you do? You did nothing. You knew it was fake but didn't tell us. You just wanted to harm us. Traitor. Selfish ghost. Can you afford to pay for this? The voices crashed down even more fiercely than before. Standing at the center of the storm, I suddenly felt a sense of absurdity. Just minutes ago, these people were still grateful to Selena. And now they had turned all their hatred toward me. I looked at Selena. She stood in the center of the crowd, tears still streaming down her face, but there was an extremely subtle curve at the corner of her mouth, not a sobbing twitch but a sneer. That smile vanished in a flash, so fast that one might almost think it was an illusion. But I saw it. I saw the smugness in her eyes, the mockery. In that instant, I felt a chill run through my entire body. This wasn't an accident. This was a carefully orchestrated trap. Selena had known all along that the notification was fake. She deliberately posted it in the group chat to make everyone miss the exam. And now, using her tears and the identity of a victim, she was shifting all the blame onto me. She had not only harmed the whole class but also made me the scapegoat. I took a deep breath, etching that smile into my mind. Then I turned around, grabbed Yvonne by the wrist, and walked through the furious crowd toward the stairwell. The cursing continued behind me. Traitor! Selfish jerk! Just you wait. I didn't look back. 3 days after the college entrance exam ended, I received a private message. It was from a stranger with just one sentence. You selfish ghost, you made the whole class fail, why don't you just go die? I stared at the screen for a long time, then locked it and went back to helping my mother pick vegetables. Mother was sitting nearby picking green beans, glancing at me from time to time, wanting to speak but stopping herself. She didn't know what had happened. She only knew that I had been completely listless ever since I came back from the exam. Nina, are you hiding something from Mom? She finally asked. I looked up and smiled. No, I'm just a bit tired from exams. Mother looked into my eyes and after a while, lowered her head to continue picking the vegetables, without pressing further. She put the trimmed green beans into the basin and said softly, If you're tired, go rest, Mom is here. I didn't reply, just stripping the strings off the green bean in my hand a bit more carefully. That night, my private messages were blowing up. Dozens of messages, all cursing me. Traitor. You wretched curse. What gives you the right to get good grades all by yourself? Someone like you ought to be expelled. Just you wait, we'll make you pay. I read through them one by one, didn't reply and didn't delete them. Then I opened the class group and found that I had already been kicked out. Yvonne sent me a screenshot. The group was still flooding with messages. That bitch Nina made us late and still pretended to be innocent. Exactly. Selena already said she did it on purpose. Should we file a joint report against her? Let her have a taste of getting fired too. I turned off my phone, lay down on the bed and stared at the ceiling. Selena's gentle face flashed through my mind, along with that fleeting cold sneer. Why did she do this? She was clearly the sender of that notification. So why did everyone believe she was the victim, and I was the traitor? The next afternoon, Yvonne came to find me secretly. She slipped out while her parents were napping, ran to the downstairs of my house and sent a message. Nina, can I come up? I went downstairs and brought her into the house. Her eyes turned red as soon as she walked in. Nina, I'm sorry. My parents wouldn't let me go out. They said this has blown up too much and told me not to get involved. It's okay. I poured her a glass of water. You don't have to say you're sorry. But they're all cursing you. Yvonne's tears fell. It's clearly not your fault. I handed her a tissue. Stop crying. Tell me, what's the situation in the class right now? Yvonne wiped her tears and took a deep breath. Everyone is discussing how to settle the score with you. Some people want to report you to the school, some want to contact reporters, and others are saying. She paused, her voice dropping. There are also people saying they'll make you pay the price. What about Selena? What is she doing? Selena. Yvonne thought for a moment. She's been in the group chat telling everyone not to blame you, saying you probably really didn't see the messages. But the more she says that, the more everyone thinks she's the good guy and you're the bad guy. I sneered. This routine was all too familiar, ostensibly speaking up for someone, while actually reinforcing the other party's wickedness and one's own virtue. But Nina, Yvonne frowned. I've always felt that the excuse Selena gave was a bit strange. Which excuse? She said she slept in, so she didn't correct that notification in time. But Nina, Selena gets up at 6 every morning to go for a run, rain or shine. Lots of people in the class have run into her during her morning runs. How could someone who gets up at 6 every day sleep in on the day of the Gaokao? Besides, she didn't have to take the exam, so she wasn't afraid of being late at all. I was stunned. That's right. How could someone who unfailingly gets up at 6 o'clock just happen to sleep in on that day? Unless she never intended to sleep at all. Yvonne. I stood up and walked to the window. Thank you for telling me this. Nina, you. What are you going to do? Yvonne asked nervously. I turned to look at her. I'm going to find out why she did this. That night I couldn't sleep, tossing and turning in bed. Many old memories surfaced in my mind. In middle school, I lent my competition entry to a good friend. But she plagiarized it and submitted it, winning an award, while I was falsely accused of being the plagiarist. That time I chose silence. I thought silence would bring peace, but all it brought was more bullying and isolation. Since then, I learned not to trust others easily, learned to observe and analyze, but I never actively fought back. I thought that as long as I didn't do anything wrong, nothing would happen. But now I know, sometimes even if you don't do anything wrong, others will still pin the blame on you. Selena is just that kind of person. She thought I would remain silent, would endure it just like before. But she was wrong. This time I won't be silent anymore. I turned my phone back on and started searching. Selena's name, information about her family, news related to her. Soon I found something. Selena's mother is the owner of the Huaying Education Training Institution. Selena's father is named George, the deputy director of the City Education Bureau, in charge of admissions. Training agencies. The Education Bureau guaranteed admission quotas. Could there be a connection between these three? I continued scrolling. There was a news item from 3 months ago with the headline Deputy Director of the Municipal Education Bureau, George, suspected of irregularities in handling guaranteed admission quotas, currently under investigation. but clicking on it wouldn't open. The page displayed, "This article has been deleted." I found the original text using a web cache. Parents had reported that George used his position to manipulate guaranteed admission quotas for the training agency, Huaing Education, involving a transfer of interests. But after the report, the matter went nowhere. I organized this information into my phone's memo pad, and then turned off the screen. Training agencies, the deputy director of the Education Bureau, the deleted news report, and the fake notification on the night before the college entrance exam. There must be a thread connecting all these things. A week later, I told Yvonne about my findings. "You mean Selena orchestrated the whole class being late just to cover up her dad's situation?" Yvonne's voice was trembling. "It's just speculation, but there's a strong possibility," I said. "Help me find out if anyone in the class is close to Selena and might know some inside information." Yvonne bit her lip, hesitated for a moment, and finally nodded. "I'll give it a try." 3 days later, Yvonne brought news. She arranged to meet me at the community entrance, looking around nervously for a long time before lowering her voice and saying, "Nina, I found out. Someone heard Selena on the phone saying things like, 'Suppress the public opinion first, no matter how much it costs, and don't let those parents make a fuss anymore.'" "Who heard it?" "Lily, who sits behind her. Lily said Selena hid at the end of the corridor to make a phone call during a self-study class one day. The door wasn't fully closed, and she overheard a few words as she walked by. She didn't think much of it at the time, and only remembered after the incident happened." "Anything else?" "Also," Yvonne hesitated, "some people say Selena's recommended spot was obtained by her dad through a training agency. The agency promised her the spot, on the condition that her dad give the green light to the agency regarding admissions policy. Trading influence for gain. George used his power to accommodate the training agency, and the agency used the recommended spot as a return. And the report 3 months ago nearly toppled all of this. Selena needed a bigger distraction to shift the public's attention, and so the entire class of 42 people became the sacrifices she used to cover up the scandal." "Nina," Yvonne's face turned pale. "To save herself, she harmed the whole class." "Yes," I said. "In her eyes, we are all just pawns." Over the next few days, I started preparing. Selena's weakness was greed. She spent money to suppress news, which showed she was afraid of the truth being exposed. I registered a new anonymous account and posted a message online. "I possess internal evidence of George, the deputy director of the City Education Bureau, violating regulations regarding quota-based recommendations. Intending to sell, price negotiable. Contact via private message." After waiting 2 days, a private message popped up. "You say you have evidence? What kind of evidence?" I didn't reply. Another day passed. "How much? We can talk." Still no reply. On the 3rd day, the other side got anxious. "What exactly do you want?" "I work for George. If it's real, let's meet and talk. The price is negotiable." I looked at the screen, the corners of my mouth slightly raised. After waiting for 2 days, I replied, "I don't trust you. I want to speak to Selena directly." The other side was silent for a long time. "Who are you? How do you know Selena?" "I know about her father, and I know how her guaranteed admission slot came about. If you don't want the evidence exposed, have her come see me." An even longer silence. Then the reply came, "Fine. You decide the time and place." I chose a cafe in the city center, setting the time for 3 p.m. 3 days later. It was a public place with a crowd and prying eyes, so she wouldn't dare try anything. Then I started preparing. A medical mask, a baseball cap, and a pair of black-rimmed glasses. I hid a small voice recorder in my sleeve and tested it 3 times to ensure it was working properly. I sent a message to Yvonne. 3 p.m. 3 days from now, Slow Time Cafe in the city center. You come, sit at another table and pretend to read, and be my witness. Yvonne replied instantly with a single word. Okay. 3 days later, 2:50 p.m. I sat in the cornermost seat of the cafe, where the light was dim and it was hard to see clearly. Wearing a mask and a hat, I kept my head down looking at my phone while scanning the entrance out of the corner of my eye. Yvonne sat at another table by the window, a book open in front of her that she had only flipped through 2 pages, her fingers nervously picking at the corners of the pages. At 3 o'clock sharp, the door was pushed open. Selena walked in. She was wearing a light blue dress and light makeup, but there were faint dark circles under her eyes, making it look like she hadn't had an easy few days. She stood at the door and looked around, her gaze pausing for a second as it swept over me, then moving away. She didn't recognize me. She walked toward my table and sat down opposite me. "You're the one who wants to sell the evidence." She lowered her voice, her tone wary. I didn't speak. I just nodded. "What exactly do you want? Money? Or something else?" I still didn't speak, just watched her quietly. Selena's eyes began to show impatience. "If you don't speak, how am I supposed to know if you're for real or a scammer?" I slowly took off my mask. Selena's expression went from wary to shocked, and then turned deathly pale. "Nina!" She stood up abruptly, the legs of the chair scraping across the floor with a harsh screech. "Are you playing me?" "Sit down," I said calmly. "Every word you just said has been recorded." I took the voice recorder from my sleeve and placed it on the table. Selena froze there, her face pale as paper, her whole body trembling. She looked at the recorder, then at me, her lips fluttering a few times, before finally slowly sitting back down. What exactly do you want?" "The truth," I said. "Why did you send that fake notification?" Selena bit her lip and said nothing. "You don't have to say it." I put the voice recorder back in my pocket, then took out a USB flash drive and twirled it between my fingers. "This recording, plus the news about your father that was deleted 3 months ago, is enough for the reporters to fill a whole page." Selena's expression completely changed. She stared at the USB flash drive, her throat moved, and finally she spoke. "My dad made me do it." "Why?" "Someone reported him." Her voice was low and she spoke quickly. "He asked me to create an even bigger story to suppress that report. We originally only intended to make a scene for a couple of days and then stop. We didn't expect it to get this big." "So you harmed all 42 people in the class? What do they count as in your eyes?" "I had no choice." Selena's voice suddenly became shrill, then she suppressed it again. "My dad said that if that matter was investigated, he'd be done for, my guaranteed admission spot would be cancelled, and our whole family would be finished. So other people's lives can just be sacrificed at will?" Selena lowered her head without answering, her shoulders trembling slightly. I looked at her for a few seconds, put away the voice recorder and USB drive and stood up. "Selena, do you know? You think your dad can help you cover this up, but the words you said in the cafe have already blocked his last way out." I turned and walked out. Behind me came Selena's muffled sobs, but this time I didn't look back. Yvonne stood up from the window and hurried to catch up. Stepping out of the cafe door, sunlight hit her face and she let out a long breath, her hands still trembling slightly. "Nina, I recorded it all." "Good. Let's talk when we get back." Over the next week I didn't rush to expose anything. I already had the core evidence, the recording of Selena admitting at the cafe that she had orchestrated all of this. But I wanted to dig deeper into the entire chain of interests. Yvonne also found out something else for me. The homeroom teacher Derek was involved as well. Someone had seen him having dinner with George before the college entrance exam, more than once. He was the intermediary, leaking internal school information to the training agency, and the agency gave him kickbacks in return. I sent Selena a final message from an anonymous account. "I know Derek is in there too. Tell me what he did, and I'll give the recording back to you." Selena replied quickly. "He passes messages for my dad. Whatever inside information the training institution needs, my dad tells him, and he passes it on to the institution. The institution gives him kickbacks." "Thanks," I replied with 2 words and took a screenshot to save it. Selena posted another follow-up. "You said you wouldn't expose it." I didn't reply to her. "Selena, you're just like your dad. You trust too much that everything can be solved with a deal." Thursday night, I posted an anonymous message online. "There is an inside story to the whole class being late for the Gaokao. See you tomorrow." The post quickly got thousands of views, and the comment section was filled with question marks. I didn't reply to a single one. Friday morning, the school issued an announcement. Regarding the incident of some students arriving late on the day of the Gaokao, the school attaches great importance to this matter, and will hold a briefing meeting in the auditorium this afternoon. Relevant personnel are requested to attend. I closed my phone, put the USB drive and the voice recorder into my bag. At 2 o'clock in the afternoon, the auditorium was packed. Students, parents, teachers, and 2 local reporters carrying cameras. I sat in the last row against the wall, not speaking to anyone. Yvonne sat next to me, clutching her backpack strap, her palms sweating. The principal said a few opening remarks, then continued. For today's information session, adhering to the principles of openness and transparency, we have invited the individuals involved to explain the situation regarding being late for the Gaokao. Which student would like to go first? The audience fell silent for a few seconds. Then Selena, sitting in the front row, stood up. She was wearing a white dress and seemed to have composed herself. Her eyes were slightly red, as if she were there to apologize. She turned to face everyone, her voice laced with just the right amount of sobbing. Fellow students, parents, and teachers, first of all, I would like to apologize to everyone. I stood up. I have something to say. Everyone's eyes snapped toward me. I walked down the aisle toward the stage, and people in the audience began to whisper. It's her. That traitor still dares to show up? I ignored the commotion, walked onto the stage, took a USB drive out of my bag, and handed it over. The principal hesitated for a moment, then took it and plugged it into the computer. Everyone, the incident where the entire class was late, on the day of the college entrance exam was not an accident, I said into the microphone. It was orchestrated. The orchestrator is Selena. An uproar erupted from the audience. Selena whipped her head around to look at me, her face instantly changing color. You're talking nonsense. Do you have any proof? I do. I clicked the mouse. The large screen began playing the recording. My dad made me do it. He told me to create a bigger news story to suppress the whistleblower report. Selena's voice echoed clearly throughout the entire auditorium. The second recording continued to play. Derek helped my dad pass on messages. Whatever the training agency needed, my dad told him, and he would relay it to the agency. A dead silence fell over the audience. Then someone started screaming. Victor leapt to his feet, his face flushed red. Selena? It was you? You said those people deserved it? You said we were nothing. You made us miss the Gaokao, and you say you're helping us? Can you afford to pay for this? Victor slammed the water bottle in his hand onto the ground. More people stood up. Some were shouting, some were crying with their faces covered, and a boy wearing glasses kicked over a chair. Selena stood in the center of the crowd, her lips trembling, unable to speak. She turned to look at the principal, then looked at the doorway, but several people were already standing there, wearing dark suits and uniforms. Selena, George, Derek, please come with us. The leader flashed his badge. The last trace of color drained from Selena's face. As she was being led away, she paused for a second beside me. That look held hatred, unwillingness, but above all, a daze of having lost all bargaining chips. Derek was helped out from the faculty section, his face ashen, not looking up at anyone. After the door closed, the auditorium remained quiet for a long time. Then Victor turned his head to look at me, his lips moving as if he wanted to say something. I looked at him, waiting for him to speak. Nina. His voice was extremely hoarse. I'm sorry. I didn't answer, just turned and walked down the stage, exiting through the side door. Sunlight beat down on the steps outside the auditorium, warm and pleasant. Yvonne followed me out, said nothing, and just stood quietly beside me. Let's go back, I said. Later, the investigation results came out. George was placed under investigation and stripped of all his positions. Selena's qualification for admission without examination was revoked, and a record of the violation was entered into her file. Derek was expelled from public office and subjected to a circular of criticism. Huang Education was ordered to suspend operations for rectification. Among the students who arrived late, 23 chose to repeat the school year, while the others went to vocational colleges or entered the workforce. The school opened a fast track for them, waiving all tuition for repeating. But the summer they missed was something no one could ever make up for. As for myself, I received an admission letter from a key university in the province. It wasn't top tier, but I was satisfied with it. Years later, one evening, I received a postcard from Yvonne. She had been accepted into graduate school and said she wanted to become a middle school teacher. On the back of the postcard was her campus, with people sunbathing on the lawn. I tucked it inside a book and turned to water the pot hose on the windowsill. Droplets hung from the tips of the leaves, glistening in the setting sun. I suddenly thought of that morning filled with anger and weeping, of the muffled thumping on the door in the corridor, and of Selena's fleeting sneer. After all these years, those images had grown somewhat blurry, like an old photograph soaked in water. But there are some things I remember clearly. That day, I woke up 10 minutes before my alarm. The sky outside was still gray, and my mother was busy in the kitchen. The clatter of the spatula against the wok made me feel at ease. That was the most ordinary morning of my life. But from that day on, I learned one thing. Some people's gentleness is fake, and so are some people's tears. But it doesn't matter. The truth is like this. The more you try to cover it up, the more it wants to come out for a breath of fresh air.